What's going on, everyone? Mike Kadlick, Tayler Kyles here for CLNS Media, back with another emergency edition of the Patriots Daily Podcast, powered by Prize Picks, powered by Game Time, and now potentially, Taylor, powered by the #1 overall pick in the 2024 NFL Draft. Yep, you heard that correctly. Yesterday's Giants win over the Indianapolis Colts currently puts the Patriots in the #1 overall slot in the 2025 NFL Draft. So, Taylor, let's talk about it. Let's look at the Patriots' options, the race to #1, if it's actually possible, and how this whole thing can get going here. So first and foremost, Patriots control their own destiny right now. If they lose to the Buffalo Bills next weekend, they will select first overall. If they lose, there's a chance they fall all the way out of the top 4. I think it depends on tonight's game between the Lions and the 49ers. There's some sort of strength of schedule situation there. I'm not smart enough to understand all that. All I know is if they lose, they do have the #1 overall pick. Now, we just spoke to Maye a few minutes ago, and he was asked straight up if there's a situation where they could sit Drake Maye this weekend to protect him, to keep him healthy heading into the next season. He said everything's on the table, but he was also asked about the #1 pick in itself, saying that their sole focus this week is on beating the Buffalo Bills. So with all that information, with what we've learned, Taylor, is there a situation where the Patriots can tank this thing and lose on purpose? Do you think that's at all possible? I'll give it quickly. I don't. I think that makes all this unprofessionalism from the Patriots this season look worse. But understanding where this team could be, Drake Maye, quarterback, all this cap space, potentially #1 overall pick. What do you make of it? What do they do? And what are your thoughts on the situation as a whole?
Yeah, Gerard Mayo is not in a position to do anything where it looks like he is tanking.
100%.
That said, I do think that shutting Drake Maye down should still be on the table, because I don't think that necessarily is tanking. I think you just saw the kid take a hit to the head last week, possibly get a concussion, which would have been technically the second one. Now, obviously, Drake said that he didn't think he was actually concussed last time, but still, that's what the medical professional said, so that's what we have to go on. And obviously, with these kinds of things, we have to take it seriously. So if you're saying, hey, is one more game of reps against backups worth potentially Drake getting hurt? I don't think it is. I really don't. And the thing is, the only way I'd argue against that would be that Drake didn't have a great game last week. And honestly, it was the second week in a row where he was a little bit shaky. Now, in Buffalo, you can understand because the weather wasn't great. He's not really used to playing in conditions like that. Needs to get used to it because he's going to be playing in them quite a bit, especially if the Patriots end up turning it around and there are some playoffs in Foxboro or what have you. And then last game, he kind of understood as well because, it's a short week. I'm not trying to make excuses for the kid here or anything, but he kind of understood it was a blowout, just kind of a really weird game. Nobody really ever got any momentum going, even though it felt like his eyes weren't in the right place at times. There were some errant throws, just more discouraging plays than you're used to from Drake Maye. So I would like him to end on more of a high note, maybe be able to correct those things. So if you give him a half, honestly, I'd be cool with that. I think you can get out of the game by saying, okay, we want to get Drake Maye some positive momentum to close the season, but we also want to see what some other guys on our roster can do. I think that's perfectly fine because the season is lost. Gerard Mayo has said they want to see their young talent perform. This is literally the opportunity. Can Jalen Polk, Javon Baker, Joe Milton, who hasn't gotten an opportunity to play, obviously, show something against backups during the regular season so you have some idea of what you're going to carry in to 2025? And I know that I said last week that I thought them winning to close out was what they should be doing, and I did feel that way. But when you get blown out by the Chargers and now you're playing backups, I know that the team shouldn't necessarily think this way, but the way I see it is, hell yeah, try to lock up that #1 pick, because I don't think that you're going to get any significant goodwill back if you do play all of your starters the entire game and beat up on the backups. I think it would have been a nice cherry on top if you beat the Chargers or if it was close, but now I feel like it would just kind of be tone deaf to be like, oh yeah, now we got to take it to these backups. Like, nah, man, last week was really, really bad and no one's going to be forgetting anytime soon.
And we never thought that Drew Lock and the Giants were going to beat Indy yesterday. So we never really thought that this was a serious option. It was, second pick to maybe fourth or fifth pick, depending on how the rest of the league shakes out. But now you have a legitimate chance to use this asset and continue to rebuild this team that, has been decrepit over the last couple seasons. So I still think it's difficult to go out there and sit your franchise quarterback when it looks like you're, tanking and trying to lose. Now, if they go out there, again, there's a difference between saving Drake Maye and saving the health of Drake Maye and going out there and taking a knee for 3 quarters when you're down by 10 points and openly trying to lose, where if you just put out your developmental players and they're still, working their ass off to try and play football, that's fair game. That's different than tanking and purposely, I think about in basketball, missing shots or bricking free throws on purpose and things like that. That's hard to do in football. That's never going to happen. But
you'll get hurt. In football, if you don't try, you'll get run over, you'll get bulldozed or whatever, you'll get hit real hard. And if you're not competitive, that could just lead to injury. So it's smart or not to.
Exactly. And so Gerard Mayo at least leaves it open this morning. Drake Maye could, he says all options are on the table for potentially sitting him. He was also asked about Joe Milton and said that that's a possibility that he could potentially be elevated this week as well. So we'll see what happens there. But that is the situation in Foxboro, at least right now. As we know, that can always change. So if the Patriots do land this number 1 overall pick this week, they do lose to the Bills, or they win and something else happens and they do have number 1. What are your thoughts on what they should do with it, Taylor? I hear stick and pick Travis Hunter. I joked on Twitter yesterday, stick and pick a tackle in Kelvin Banks. Obviously, I was joking and just trying to rile up the masses, as I tend to do. But it's a situation where, on one hand, you can sit there and just, you don't need a quarterback, but you take the best prospect you deem you think is available because you do not have a ton of blue chip talent on this team. It is a relatively weak draft class compared to years past. So there's an argument to stick and pick a guy like Travis Hunter, even one of the tackles or a wide receiver other than him, Ted McMillan, etc. Or you have a real opportunity to call up those QB needy teams, the Giants that we mentioned, the Raiders, and both of those teams could want a guy in Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward from Miami, and you could end up potentially getting a serious haul, maybe another first-round pick next year, or something like that. One of their second-round picks. You can really turn this into a batch of quality dart throws in the NFL draft. So where do you currently stand, Taylor? What are your thoughts on it? What do you think the Patriots should do? And if they do land number 1, what do you think they will ultimately do?
There are 2 big things I want to outline first. One, because this isn't a very top-heavy class, there's not a lot of true blue-chip talent at the top where there's not a lot of things that worry you about them. They're surefire, Pro Bowl, All-Pros. Right. Not a ton of those. So if they're going to trade, I don't know they're going to get a huge package. I don't know how far they're even going to be able to move. Yeah. And because of that, I don't know if you're necessarily going to get a future first and a second-round pick like that kind of haul necessarily. It might just be, hey, try your best to get another first-round pick if you can. If not, maybe settle for a second and a third, something along those lines.
If that's the situation, I don't want to move too far back either.
Exactly. Now, if you move, honestly, I'm okay with moving to 9 or something like that. And this is all dependent on what I say next. But if they move to 9 and you do get a haul where you get second and third this year, a first next year, another pick next year in the top 100, then I'm listening. Because again, I don't think there's enough blue chip talents at the top where I'm I have to stay locked in. Maybe that'll change as I watch more of these guys, but I just don't really feel that way. Now, also, I think obviously the draft to some degree is going to be informed by what happens in free agency. Now, I want them to leave free agency with no glaring holes so they can go best player available. Because if you are able to sign Cam Robinson or Alaric Jackson, you sign Trey Smith, you sign T. Higgins, and the offense really has no massive gaps in it, and then defensively, maybe you sign 1 or 2 starting caliber difference-making defensive linemen, then I feel like you go into the draft and you really can have your pick of, okay, I really like this player. This is a blue chip guy, whether that's Travis Hunter, whether that's Abdul Carter, you can fire away. Right? But you got to fill those premium spots in free agency as best you can. Because if, say, you get Darius Slayton, but you don't get T. Higgins, it's all right, Slayton gives you more juice, but then you might have to try to stay in range to get a Ted McMillan, because I just don't think you're going to be able to get another quality receiver with that skill set. So I think, again, free agency is going to dictate what exactly their needs are entering the draft. You would like to be able to go best player available, but there's also some level of you have to acknowledge if you have one massive hole on one side of the ball or the other. But trading down, if they keep number 1, has to be it. I don't think there's anybody who's worth you staying at number 1 and not trying to get something else out of this board. And then if you do have a successful free agency and if Gerard Mayo stays and people take him seriously enough to actually want to sign with the team and believe in whatever his messaging is, then obviously that gives you a lot more options come May, April.
April, end of April, early May.
Yeah,
that's
I
kind
don't
of
know why I went for the month. That was so risky. I was like, don't do that, Taylor. And I just did it. And I
do
looked
it all the time. Every time I write something about the NFL draft and I look, I'm like, is it April? Is it May? I never remember where we're at. It used to be end of May. Or beginning of May. They've kind of switched it around. But long story short, Patriots, as of right now, sitting with that number 1 overall pick. And you wonder too, like what ownership thinks of the entire situation right now. Do they keep Gerard Mayo? Do they keep Elliott Wolf? Do they completely clear house? And now I agree with you for the most part as far as Elliott Wolf goes, where I don't think he's done anything egregious enough to deserve to be fired after one season. They gave him the vice president of player personnel title this offseason. I think he deserves the right to continue to try and rebuild this, where Gerard Mayo, you wonder if he deserves the right after how things have gone this season. But at the same time, when you have this number 1 overall pick and the ability to turn this into a potential haul and really revamp this team, ownership's going to have to look themselves in the mirror and think, do we trust Elliott Wolf to do all of this as well? So I think they will. I think he'll ultimately be the man in charge, but we will have to see what happens. Again, Patriots, as of right now, hold on to the number 1 overall pick in the 2025 NFL draft. If they lose to Buffalo next weekend, they will continue with that into the spring. So it all comes down to week 18. Patriots taking on the Buffalo Bills in Foxboro, 1 p.m. kickoff next Sunday. Myself and Taylor will be there, and we will be here all week on Patriots Press Pass, giving you all the news, notes, film, what have you, as the Patriots finish up this season. So make sure you keep it here, rate, review, and subscribe to the channel, to the podcast. And until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we will see you all next time. Peace out, everyone.